Good morning, everyone. We'll just give it a couple more minutes to see if anyone else joins us. Okay, it looks like we still have people joining, but we can get started now. I'm a Gunflock. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network. And thank you for joining us today. I'm Alexis Wagner. I'm the Environmental Program Specialist for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but I'm also a part of the Learning Network team. And if we go to the next slide. Just some quick housekeeping. If you're calling in, please mute your phone. If you don't have a dedicated mute button, pressing *6 should mute your phone. And if you're using your computer audio, all participants have been muted as they enter. During the Q&A session and when we get to share our stories, you'll be able to unmute yourself to ask a question. And we'll also be monitoring the chat for those that want to type their question. And this session will be recorded. You may have gotten that notice already. This recording will be added to our Learning Network website for those that aren't able to join today. And we invite those of you who are able to access the chat on Zoom to please introduce yourself, name, where you're from, and how you're involved with the Tribal Climate Resilience Program. Firstly, we'll kind of go over the session overview. We'll be going over the introduction to the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network, how we can assist you in your climate-related projects. And we'll also be going over helpful resources in getting started with adaptation planning and these types of projects, welcoming the fiscal year 21 TCRP awardees, and giving quick summary and introductions of each category and some of the projects that have been funded in Alaska. And after that, we'll be asking the awardees to share out. Some of you may have said that you are willing to share, and we're excited to hear what you have to say. And lastly, we'll go over some quick announcements. And I will pass it off to Melinda.
All right. Well, I really welcome everybody. Congratulations on your recent award. It's great to see that many of you who are familiar names as well as new names in the participant list are joining us today, as well as that you have an award and are starting off your project or continuing with one. And so we've been on a break, the Learning Network, for the summer, which in part we've used for planning, but also really recognizing how busy many people are, and particularly our tribes are during the summer. And so we welcome those of you who are returning and have been with us before, but also those of you who are new. And so I really just want to share with you that we work as a team at the Learning Network and the Alaska Center, and many of those who are here today helping with this webinar are going to be, you'll meet all of us. But for many of you, I'm Melinda Chase. I'm the tribal liaison at the Alaska Adaptation Science Center, which is based on the Lower Tanana Dene traditional territory. Excuse me, which is the traditional Dene, Lower Dene name for where the University of Alaska is located, and also the International Arctic Research Center. And when I do land introductions anymore, I really think about, you know, what's the story of the land and what does the story tell us? And Troth stands for Indian potato. And in the Tok area a couple of years ago, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, and I had a chance to just really enjoy a whole bowl full of trough and about what it takes to harvest that, and imagining that covering the ridge there, and that ridge has been a traditional gathering place, as well as a traditional for the people of the Lower Tanana Dene. And it has like 11 place names in the immediate area. And so I just wanted to open acknowledging the significance of the hill that IARC is based on and where many of us work. So Dogaden, next slide. So in terms of really looking at adaptation, and many of you who are launching into the next into your adaptation planning, you know, in Alaska we're really dynamic space when we look at how much our land is changing with climate change. But adaptation is really happening in this context of huge dynamics across Alaska, you know, within our Indigenous worldview, in the fact that we are just 60 years old as a state. Many of us have parents and grandparents that were born into a territory and change that has led us to much of our economy being an extractive economy. We have development of minerals and oil, and what does that mean, as well as trying to keep our traditional and oftentimes our livelihood based on our animals and our subsistence livelihood, or traditional harvest, and all this is happening in a very fragmented system of land ownership and game management that has really divided up Alaska over the course of our recent history, especially with our land claims. But within that, we also see really vibrant and innovative hope with a lot of our revitalization efforts, or areas that we are exploring to address many of our issues around energy, or looking at affirming our identity. And so really understanding and looking at how these play out with adaptation as you're moving forward to address planning, that climate change exasperates many of the issues, and that we also are in a place where we have a lot of dynamics as Indigenous people with. So Dogaden, next slide. So within adaptation planning, and as you are looking at building on your current plan, if you have and you've had prior awards, many of you know this. If you are new to looking at planning, it can be really overwhelming, especially if you are new staff or you're bringing on new staff, or even if you are a seasoned staff and you're trying to stay up with the many dozen reports that are coming out. There's all kinds of things coming at you in this space. And, it can be, what are climate projections and how do I understand and read those? How do they relate to the scenarios that we're looking at for our future across the globe? And what does that mean for its impact in Alaska? How do we access information? When we have issues around our tribes, getting connectivity and the demands on time that it takes to really write and compile and engage with your community. So these are all areas that like reality in this space, and the tribal liaison, the tribal learning network is really here to help try to support the tribes in this effort. So I'll turn it over to you, Krista.
Thanks, Melinda. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, thanks for giving a background on sort of what has informed the development of the learning network. Before we get started, I just want to briefly introduce our team. You've heard from Melinda and Alexis. Later on, you'll hear from Megan, and my name is Krista Haringa, and I'm originally from Fairbanks, the traditional homelands of the Lower Tanana Dene people. And I currently still reside here. And the four of us make up the core team of the Learning Network, with a lot of support from quite a few other folks. Geraldine Kelly and Diane Sam have been really instrumental working group members that have informed our work. Ryan Toohey and Jeremy Littell are affiliated USGS and Alaska Climate Adaptation Science Center science staff. Nathan Kettle has done a lot of work relating to evaluation and evaluating our programs to help us really be responsive to all of the folks that have participated in our work. And Molly and Mike are our communication leads and are just a very, very integral part of our team. Next slide, please. So our vision for the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network is that we will help foster a community of learning, sharing, and support among Alaska tribes and Indigenous communities that are responding to current and future impacts to climate change. I do want to just highlight briefly the framework that helps guide the design and development of our work. And really importantly, I think Melinda really emphasized this as we began, but just we're very intentional, whether we're planning an information session, workshop, or publication, to make sure that we're framing our work from an Indigenous perspective and experiences. And that means really looking at things from a holistic perspective, and really honoring just the many traditions within Alaska. Teamwork, collective action, and shared learning is an important aspect of adaptation planning. And so we strive to support forums that foster and support teamwork and joint leadership. Climate change adaptation is complex and affects many parts of daily life. When we host sessions and workshops, we want to make sure we clearly define the specific planning issues we are hoping to address. In our sessions, we incorporate the most current climate science and relevant research to topic areas being discussed. We also try to make sure that we include practical examples and strategies that tribes and communities can or are using in their adaptation work. Lastly, we want to connect relevant and current information and subject matter experts to communities that are working on the front lines of climate change. And so these are just different components of what helps us guide the work that we're doing within the Learning Network. Next slide, please. Key components of the Learning Network include information sessions like the one we are hosting today, special topic workshops such as the Tribal Wellness and Climate Adaptation Planning workshop that was held this past August, as well as one-on-one technical support. We launched the Learning Network last spring and are excited to be kicking off our information sessions again in September after we took a short break over the summer. There are a few different ways that you can participate in the Learning Network. In addition to attending information sessions, first, we are available for monthly or as needed one-on-one check-in calls for tribes and communities that are planning or just getting started with their climate adaptation projects. And myself, Melinda, Alexis, and Megan will host calls with your tribe or project team. Depending on the unique concerns and priorities of your community, we will also look for opportunities to connect you with experts that can support your work. We also will begin again hosting monthly Learning Network calls, and these calls may have different conversational topics each month, but one of the main goals of these calls is to provide a space where communities can hear and learn from each other. If you haven't already done so, please consider signing up for the Tribal Resilience e-Bulletin. This is distributed about every 3 weeks and includes upcoming events, funding opportunities, and links to different resources that support tribal communities in climate change adaptation. The newsletter is also a great place to learn about upcoming information sessions and trainings that we will be offering through the Learning Network. And you can find all of this information and how to participate on our Learning Network website. And as I'm going through, Mike is dropping all of these links in the chat. Next slide, please. All of our information sessions have been recording, including this one. And for folks that haven't participated in these information sessions in the past, I would definitely encourage you to go check these out. There's a few that may be really helpful to folks who are just getting started with their adaptation plan or vulnerability assessments. Also, there's some that might be helpful for folks who are working on permafrost assessments. So please take a few moments to check those out. We also include links to all of the presentations, and we also try to include relevant resources that were mentioned during the presentations. Next slide, please. Many of you are probably already familiar with these, but I do want to take a few minutes to mention a few resources for tribal climate adaptation planning that might be helpful for you. The first is the Tribal Climate Adaptation Guidebook, and this is a great reference for tribes that are conducting vulnerability assessments or adaptation plans. And it was first developed by the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute in 2018, but they are currently in the process of updating this and migrating it to more of an online interface. The next resource that's great to know about is the Scenarios Network for Alaskan Arctic Planning, or SNAP, which has a suite of web-based tools that make climate data easily accessible and understandable. A few examples of SNAP tools include community temperature and precipitation projections, permafrost data tool, and an extreme event tool. And we will soon be adding an introductory video to our website that helps orient folks that are new to these tools and provides some examples of how they might be used in adaptation planning. And lastly, I want to mention the Adapt Alaska website, which is a good place to find examples of different adaptation strategies that are being used by communities in Alaska. And it also is a good place to find other resources and technical support. Links to all of these resources have been put in the chat, but they also can be found on our website. And with that, I want to just end with emphasizing that we're here to support tribes and Indigenous communities and their adaptation planning work. So please feel free to reach out to us. And with that, I would like to pass it along to Alexis, who will provide an overview of the BIA Tribal Climate Resilience Board.
Thank you, Krista. For those that are brand new to the program, this is just a quick overview of the categories and what the funding will support. The project summaries that we'll be listing in this PowerPoint are for category 2, adaptation planning, category 4, ocean and coastal management planning, category 6, capacity building, and category 7, relocation, managed retreat, and protect in place, as well as category 8 and 9, which are our youth categories. To be mindful of time, we have included the link at the bottom of this PowerPoint that will be included in the chat. And these will have, they'll have the descriptions on the website. So next slide, please. And the first category we'll kind of go over is category 2 on adaptation planning. And for this year's funding round, we found that this category funded Alaska projects that fell under 8 different project types. And on this slide, we can see that adaptation plans, vulnerability assessments, habitat analyses, and regional planning projects were funded. And adaptation plans and vulnerability assessments are typically the most common project types nationwide. But for Alaska, they're just a small portion of projects funded. And these projects can include studies before developing an adaptation plan. And for example, we have the Seldovia Village Tribe that's going to be conducting a habitat impact analysis. And this information could be used to support the development of an adaptation plan if they don't already have one. Next slide, please. And the next 4 topic areas that were funded under this category are permafrost vulnerability assessments, erosion risk assessments and mitigation plans, funding for a resilience coordinator, and engineering design for threatened infrastructure. And these projects can also lead to projects under other categories, such as the next one, category 7 on relocation. And the example here is engineering for threatened infrastructure that could support contracting activities to make recommendations and provide technical assistance for the protection of the critical community infrastructure. And we can kind of see how that ties into the next category, 7, on the next slide. And this category for the funding program focuses on relocation, managed retreat, and protection in place. For this fiscal year, 17 awards were funded in Alaska. And these projects are important steps in the relocation project. As you can see, they're a range of projects, just as unique as the tribes that got them. These projects range from vulnerability and risk assessments to actual engineering reports. And it could also fund resilience coordinators. For example, the Chinook Eskimo community applied to use their funding to hire a resilience coordinator to oversee all relocation projects, which really helps in the coordination, and there isn't any duplication of work within the tribe. And I'll pass it off.
Thank you, Alexis. Just to give you a little background on me, my name is Raymond Paddock, kind of as Krista said, and I am the Tribal Learning Network's Alaska Fellow in Fairbanks this year. I was actually born and raised in Mount Airy, Maryland, so on the traditional homelands of the Piscataway people. And I just graduated from the University of Maryland, where I studied international relations and psychology. So my background kind of more generally stems from international peace and conflict, and more specifically, the intersections of conflict, gender, and climate-related changes in community-led migration. I feel very excited and grateful to be able to work within the Learning Network this year. And kind of with that, today I'm going to be touching on categories 4, 6, 8, and 9. So just to start off, category 4 supports ocean and coastal management planning, marine spatial planning, coastal adaptation resilience analysis, and cooperative marine resource plans. And as you can see here, there are 5 total awards for this fiscal year. And we've kind of grouped category 4 into 2 diverse categories. So for projects on habitat impact analysis and regional surveying and capacity building. So for habitat impact analysis, it ranges widely in topic from monitoring traditional harvest of Bering Strait king crabs to a Quag Lake limnology and productivity study, to intertidal shellfish assessments. And for regional surveying and capacity building, this year's awards are for conducting the first survey on average fish consumption rates for Southeast Alaska and for developing culturally relevant career technical education in fisheries management, as well as supporting grassroots fisheries management in Hoonah and across the state of Alaska, which kind of leads us into the next category here on the right, Category 6 awards for dedicated capacity building. So capacity building awards offer support where there may be limited technical and staffing capacity to investigate risks that may lead to more detailed adaptation planning proposals in the future, kind of like what Alexis was talking about before. And there are 4 recipients in Alaska for that category for this fiscal year. And thank you. And the next slide. So here, categories 8 and 9 cover awards for internships and youth engagement. And there's a lot of similarity between these 2 categories, which is kind of why we have it on the same slide. So both programs aim to support climate resilience, adaptation planning, or ocean and coastal management for a younger audience. So internship awards are designed to support college students, recent grads, and this year's awards are specifically for climate resilience and tribal resilience internships. Youth engagement, on the other hand, is aimed at a younger audience. So primary or secondary age youth and programs for science, technology, engineering, or traditional ecological knowledge and education. And this year's awards are specifically for establishing, youth stewardship, climate mini camps, and climate and watershed education activity booklets. So with that, I'll hand it right back over to Krista, who can help start our sharing portion for today.
All right, well, thank you, Megan, Alexis, and Melinda. And sorry if we rushed through the presentation components of today's session, but we really wanted to try to make as much time as possible for hearing from all of you. And so I, on this slide, I have a few guiding questions that I would like to put out to folks. You would have seen on the registration form that we asked if you'd be willing to share out on your project. So I am going to call on a few people who said yes. I'm going to jump around to a few of the different categories just to make sure that that we have a chance to hear from different folks who are working within each of the different categories. If time allows, then we'll go ahead and open it up to folks that also were interested in sharing out. I guess before we get started, Melinda wants to jump in. So I'll turn it over to you, Melinda, before we start our share out.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think just looking at the participants that are on this morning's webinar is that there's many people here that already have a wealth of knowledge and have been doing some pretty dynamic work. I mean, if you look at, we have Kenneth and Raymond on from Southeast. They've definitely been doing some dynamic work in the Tlingit and Haida territory and their homeland area, as well as other folks, Sue Plansberg, and even the work that Tana Chiefs with Deborah Lynn has been doing, and just I'm really glad that we shared out the different categories, because you can see the range of work that's going on, and know that Alaska this is like the 3rd year in a third year in a row, excuse me, for me, that we have been getting a significant amount of these awards because of the amount of change we're going through. But one thing that's constantly been stressed in a lot of our engagement events is that tribes want to learn from each other. So I just wanted that as you move forward, definitely look to one another, and also recognize that expertise that is evolving across Alaska in these different categories, in the different efforts of really trying to address where our community are at and what we're facing. So I just wanted to add that part of that was the purpose of why we highlighted the tribes that are addressing these different areas. So thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Melinda.
Go
And I guess before we open it up, I also just want to put it out to folks on this Zoom call to maybe also consider responding to a few of those questions in the chat. Just please put your name, community that you're with, and if we don't get a chance to hear from you directly, that you can introduce yourself to this group in the chat. With that, I would like to see, I don't know if Holly Al-Booty, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, from eCook Village Council. Would you be willing to share about your project if you're on the call? Okay, I'm not sure actually if I see her on. Let's see. I also see, I think I see Bruce Wright on this call, and is with the Kanik tribe. And it looks like Kanik tribe has received a Category 2 funding proposal. Bruce, would you be willing to share out about some of the work that the TRCP award will be helping facilitate? Let's see. Okay. I see Bruce on, but that's all right. Let's see. We also have okay. I see your chat, Andy. Please go ahead. If you could just introduce where you're calling from and what tribe you're with, that would be fantastic.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is Andy Wall. I am the environmental coordinator for the Kodiak Area Native Association. And on Kodiak Island, there are 10 federally recognized tribes. I deal with kind of a variety of environmental priorities that come about from those tribes. And in the past, it's been more focused, we've been more focused on water quality and solid and hazardous waste. And then we went into kind of this last year, talking to the individual tribes, and climate adaptation planning was a huge priority for a lot of reasons that I think people on this call know. And so with that knowledge, we applied for a grant to the BIA program to write a climate adaptation plan and climate adaptation template for the Kodiak tribes. And we were working with Raymond and Kenneth and Dave and Holan actually for this idea of this grant, and trying to figure out how to achieve this and write an application that would be strong and benefit the Kodiak tribes. So I have to give a lot of kudos and thank you to those individuals in the writing of our proposal. And we're gonna be reaching out to them for sure to kind of figure out how to complete this grant and this project. But the idea is to have one larger document that is a tribal focused climate adaptation plan that assesses kind of all the vulnerabilities of the tribes and looks at really what climate adaptation planning on a whole for the region. And then from that, move on into a smaller document that is a template, that's a fillable document for Kodiak tribes to be able to put their own environmental priorities in there. So they can take ideas and input from the plan itself, but then if they see something that's in the plan, or don't see something that's in the plan, they can have the option to kind of adjust their plan for the individual tribe. And the plan will be driven fully by the tribes. And we want to have a steering committee built up of tribal members in order to receive input on how to move forward with this, have a gathering where tribal members can come and talk about the environmental priorities and really figure out how to guide this document as a whole. And for the grant application, we tried to include as much traditional ecological knowledge as possible. So we will have elder interviews that the steering committee members will help find elders in their community that would be willing to talk about the changes in climate that they've seen. And then we'll also have youth engagement and the option to hire or the opportunity to hire a Alutiiq Native artist to be able to create artwork for the plan that we can incorporate. So that's kind of a long story there, but we're really, really excited about it and excited to learn more because climate adaptation has not been in our wheelhouse. And so we're taking the time right now to learn about how to move forward. And especially with COVID, it's kind of difficult to have an in-person meeting to guide that plan, but we're working on it. So thank you for the opportunity to share and happy to answer any questions about our work.
Thank you so much, Andy, for showing out. And also, if it's okay with you, Andy, to share out your email if anyone has any follow-up questions for Andy. I think just following up on what Melinda mentioned, I think some of the work that tribes and tribal organizations are doing are such an incredible resource in this work, and just sharing ideas can be really helpful in informing your own process and how to move forward. And if it's all right with you, Andy, if you would be willing to put your organization contact or your email contact, that would be great. Thank you. Next, I'm going to actually invite Bruce again to share out on some of the work that that you're involved with the Connect tribe. And I think, Bruce, I see that you're not on mute, but we cannot hear you. I don't, it doesn't look like your audio is coming through. Although I do see you talking, so. Bruce, maybe what I can do is invite you to share out in the chat, because it does not seem like we can hear you on the audio, and I apologize for that, but would love to hear or at least read some of the work that you're involved with the Connect tribe. All right, and I think I did see, yes, Raymond, I hate to put you right on the spot, but I'd like to jump forward to category 4. Would you now? Oh, okay, yes, I can hear you now. Sorry, Raymond, I'm going to call on you next, but we can hear you now, Bruce. If you
okay, I just went to the settings and changed the settings. So it was on stereo, and so I changed it to non-stereo. Don't know what that did. Anyways, one of the things I've been working on is trying to understand declines in species and mostly the Gulf of Alaska. So started working on paralytic shellfish poisoning, which is caused by a single cell marine plant. And people know about this because they refer to it as red tide. And coastal communities especially know about it, because if bivalves like clams, mussels, in any of the bivalves eat in which they do eat a lot of the dinoflagellate, the single cell plant, then they can get paralytic shellfish toxins or paralytic shellfish poisoning, called PSP. So lots of people have died in the state from eating contaminated shellfish. And every year people get sick from it. The last death was a couple of years ago, and the year before that, somebody almost died. Actually, a couple of people almost died and had to be hospitalized. So the project started off as trying to understand if paralytic shellfish poisoning was causing changes in the ecosystem. It turns out that the project focus really is on outreach, public education, and protecting human health. So a lot of people, especially coastal communities, have heard about this work. I've still tried to understand how these toxins move through the ecosystem, because I think other species are at risk too, besides people from eating shellfish. And this last couple of years, I've collected a few samples of salmon, and we look at tissues like heart, kidney, liver, stomach, contents, digestive tract, and the meat, and eggs if they're females. And we've actually been surprised to find that most of the salmon have detectable levels of paralytic shellfish poisoning. And in the kidneys, some of them have levels that are higher than the FDA limit for safe consumption in the liver, and sometimes the kidneys. I didn't think that was such a big deal, because the salmon meat and the eggs have been low. There's still a concern, but the risks are low, until I was informed that there's people that use especially king salmon liver as a delicacy, and that's especially on the Yukon River. So in 2014, I made a prediction, because a lot of the Yukon River king salmon feed in the Aleutian Islands, and the Aleutian Islands have high levels of PSP. I predicted that there would, and so the king salmon, especially the king salmon, are susceptible to the PSP toxins because of the PSP moving through the food web to the salmon. So I predicted that there'd be a collapse of the king salmon in the Yukon River, and this year we saw it. And so I think that there's some big ecosystem shifts out there due to PSP, and you guys funded me this year to focus specifically on the salmon. So I should be able to get lots of salmon samples to kind of get a better handle on this risk associated with salmon. And for the future, because the Alexandrium, the organism that produces the toxins, in the future, with warming waters, we're going to see more PSP events. We're seeing the cysts, the overwintering cysts, fall to the bottom of the ocean at the end of the season. We're seeing those cysts all the way up to the Beaufort Sea, lots of them. So it's just a matter of the water temperatures becoming warm enough that the risk to people in Alaska and to the ecosystem is going to increase. And so there's a risk to the seafood industry. A lot of places are seeing declines in salmon and other species that might be associated with this. So this year I'll be looking at salmon, and I'd like to have a call out to anybody that would like to provide salmon samples to me. That'd be great, especially Yukon River, Kuskokwim River, and even if it's just the liver and kidneys, but any of those tissues. And I only need small tissues, like let's see, how could I say this? You know, a chunk of meat the size of a silver dollar. You know, just like 30 grams of tissue is enough. And you just get the tissue, put it in a Ziploc bag. You know, one has meat in it, one has eggs, one has the digestive tract, and just label the bag. I mean, I can figure out what the part is, but put the date of collection and the location, and give me a call, and I'll come get the samples if I have to. But we'll figure out probably a way to ship them down, and then I'll have them analyzed at the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation Environmental Health Lab, and then I'll split the samples, and the other half will go to a NOAA lab in North Carolina, and I'll send you all the results. So you'll know what's going on, and you can be the local go-to person on understanding this. So I'm looking for salmon samples. I'm starting to make collections now for some of the fall salmon. Went up and got a spawned out coho salmon the other day on the Connect River. And so fall samples are okay, or samples during next summer. And then you'll get the data, and you'll be part of the project.
Well, thank you so much, Bruce, for sharing out. And I think that work is really, really important for really thinking about how climate change is impacting our food security. And so if Bruce, you'd be willing to put your contact information in the chat for people who are really thinking about salmon and how climate is impacting that really, really important food resource. Definitely take down Bruce's contact information. Next, I would like to turn it over to Raymond Paddock, he will be sharing out on work that they have done formally with a TRCP award. So I'll turn it over to you, Raymond.
Thank you, Krista. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for having me on to chat with you guys. And first off, I'd just like to congratulate Andy and the Kodiak team on their award and their upcoming program for climate change adaptation. And that fits into exactly what we did in the previous years. We got funding from the BIA Tribal Resilience Program to essentially work to create a climate change adaptation plan. And there were several steps behind doing that. The first award we got was to actually get all the Southeast Alaska tribes in a room to kind of go over what an adaptation plan is, what does it mean, the benefits of it, and then also using it to identify commonalities and priorities that we see that should be addressed in Southeast Alaska. And in doing so, we wanted to reach out to our brothers and sisters in the north and of Alaska, but much of the issues that we are facing in Southeast Alaska is not the same that's happening in Anchorage, Fairbanks, Nome, Kotzebue, North Slope, the YK Delta area. So we reached out to tribes in Washington state that has a similar ecology as Southeast Alaska. And we were able to kind of really get an idea of what their issues were and identify how we can prioritize ours. And so we used that class to essentially get trained by Jamestown S'Klallam tribe and Tulalip tribe. And again, thanks to them, they assisted us in getting this adaptation plan going. But the second part after we got the class was to essentially write a proposal to create the adaptation plan. And in doing so, I needed to hire somebody to do that. And we were able to do so. We got awarded and we hired Kenneth Weitzel, who's on the call right now. And he's the author of this adaptation plan that Clinton and Haida has drafted. We were able to, because Clinton and Haida is a regional tribe, we represent tribes in Southeast, not represent tribes, we represent tribal citizens in Southeast Alaska. Each tribe is their own sovereign nation in Southeast, but we were able to essentially create our adaptation plan on a regional level. And we know that each community has their own issues and their own priorities. And so Kenneth also had, the wherewithal to essentially create a template, and that template is essentially a filler in. So we give that template to the communities and the tribes, and they're able to take that and prioritize their issues as they see fit. And so that was one huge success, again, on creating our adaptation plan.
And that
Um,
template was robust and flexible enough that it's gained interest in British Columbia and as far away as the UK and Denmark. Just had to toot that horn. Sorry, Ray.
No, I'm glad you did. And jump in as I'm going along, Kenneth. And just so you guys are aware, Kenneth Weitzel, who is on here, again, I mentioned that he is the author of the adaptation plan. He's been the brains behind getting this going, and through his work, we've had a great amount of success in getting this done. So the adaptation plan that we first initially created was geared towards tribal issues, tribal concerns, subsistence issues, forest management stuff, and things of that nature. And that's been given out. If Kenneth, if you have an opportunity, can you share this on the chat, the adaptation plan and the template as well? We'll be able to give that to everyone to look at.
Yeah, we'll
But
do.
as the year went on, we got more requests to build onto it or to create another adaptation plan. And that was to essentially build on the social and economic impacts in Southeast Alaska. So we wanted to hear from small businesses in Southeast, municipalities, preparing for these social changes, these economic impacts that we are going to be facing in Southeast Alaska. And so we applied for more funding to essentially get that situated. And just when we were getting started, COVID happened. And much of our in-person meetings and the things that we used to create this adaptation plan was halted for a while. Unfortunately, it slowed us down, but we were able to persevere and reach out to other organizations throughout the region. And we were actually I think it was a couple months ago, Kenneth, back in May, Kenneth just finished the economic and social impact for the adaptation plan. And that's, I think Ken just shared that right now. But we look at this adaptation plan as a living document, if you will. Always looking for change. And this means, when we're working with our municipality partners in Southeast Alaska, that we want to take what their concerns are and be able to ensure that we have this in the adaptation plan, share that adaptation plan with each municipality as well. This can assist in helping with funding sources to ensure that structures and infrastructure is there, clean water, all those things that are economic impacts and social impacts as well.
And it's awesome, Ray, that you're here. You're saying this because your mind is outside and what this tool is going to be used for. My mind is inside the social economic impact assessment of climate change. I wrote it, I created it, and that's where my mind is. This is the second part of a climate change adaptation plan. And we did want it to be focused on municipalities and getting small businesses a step forward in this environment.
Right.
But everything always comes down to food security. And
right.
I got a feeling that's where we're going next. Sorry to jump that in, Ray.
No, Kenneth, you're spot on. And I appreciate you jumping in. And like Kenneth said, the next part of what we're seeing in Southeast Alaska, and I'm sure this is throughout all of Alaska, is the food security issues. And one of the biggest things that this adaptation plan has allowed us to create was actually our food security program that we have been working diligently to get going. Our first steps was to get a greenhouse, and we got a greenhouse, and now we're using that as practice for our staff to get trained in how to grow our indigenous foods and other foods, and then we want to be able to share that out. Hopefully we can start getting a regional plan going where we can ensure that we have some sort of food security program for Southeast Alaska, instead of having to wait for things like barges or fresh vegetables and things of that nature. But we're getting started on that, and it's a learning process, and we're hoping to take that and run with it in the near future. Kenneth, is there anything you wanted to add with that?
I just want to add one more tiny thing, and this is a little outside of the box. We had the luxury of having an executive council that was forward thinking enough that they created a climate change committee. That's just the executive council. whenever we get lost, whenever I feel lost, all I have to do is just revisit what their driving mission and vision is, and that always refocuses me back on what we need to do. And again, it's food security. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, no, and no, you're not off base there, because the executive council, just so you guys know, is our tribal council at Clinton and Haida. It's our leadership. And our leadership has been very well involved. And as Kenneth mentioned, you know, they created a committee. It started out as a climate change committee, but it's also evolved into much more than just the climate change aspect of it, as Kenneth mentioned, the food security aspect, as well as just other ongoing environmental and natural resource issues in Southeast Alaska. It's been really great to have that leadership guidance to ensure that we are meeting the needs of the tribal citizens within Southeast. So yeah, much appreciation there, and thank you for pointing that out, Kenneth. But other than that, you know, we still have a lot of work ahead of us, and we're really excited to be taking these next steps. Krista, can I open it up for questions, or is there anything that I can continue to add on?
I'm going to actually invite you both to also put your contact information in the chat. I want to hear from a few other folks before we close out today. And we are amazingly running down on the hour, which happens so fast because there's so much great things to share out. But Raymond and Kenneth, if you both could share your contact information. Just want to invite people on this call to contact them directly with some of the work that they're doing, because it's really, as I know for myself and others on this call have learned a lot from your work. So thank you so much.
Sure, thank you, Krista.
I do want to invite Susan to share out on some of the work that you are doing.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, my name is Susan Plansberg, and hello to folks that I've known over the years. I'm actually, I joined this call on behalf of Chignik Bay, as the environmental coordinator is also involved in other meetings and asked me to participate. Plus I work with them. So basically the gist of the proposal for Chignik, which is down the Alaska Peninsula and is really the hub of the Chignik subregion. And, you know, they've been doing, you know, work for quite some time. And just briefly, that was, you know, the tribal hazard mitigation plan that was approved by FEMA. They did an emergency response plan in 2020. They've been involved in shoreline erosion and flooding program. They collect data in collaboration with the University of Alaska Fairbanks and the state's coastal hazards lead. And just as a sidebar, the National Tsunami Warning Center installed a tsunami gauge, you know, because it's a very susceptible area. So, and it was very helpful to talk to folks such as one prior to, you know, collaborating with Chignik on the proposal. So they have a lot going on, and the question became, you know, how do we get past the planning stage and actually do something, you know, particularly building on the hazard assessment that's in progress that the University of Alaska Fairbanks is doing with the tribe and the community, which is documenting and doing projections on erosion and flooding. But it, you know, it then begs the question: how do you? What are your next steps? How do you start dealing with this in a practical way? And so, based on a series of conference calls, you know, and keeping in mind that Bristol Bay Native Corporation, which is the regional ANSCA corporation, one of their subsidiaries is an engineering firm. And the senior engineer there actually is from Bristol Bay and so forth. So in collaboration with them, the proposal that shook out from this, and Chignik Bay is delighted that it's being funded, is to build on the hazard assessment, but do a full-blown mitigation plan and risk assessments and document all this into what's, also going to be considered an adaptation plan. But the risk assessment, the mitigation plan is going to spell out the exact cost from an engineering standpoint for the infrastructure that's at risk, and it's with a defend in place, framework. Because until you have that information, you can't start prioritizing and then pursuing other funding sources to, to reinforce the infrastructure or, consider the options. So that's the, and all of this would be documented into essentially an adaptation plan that, puts together all the information that's been done and then also the engineering aspects of the risk assessment and mitigation plan. And then just in case folks are wondering, I formally retired several years ago as the environmental program manager for Bristol Bay Native Association, but over the years, there's a lot of work that's been done in Bristol Bay that's climate change related, and that ranges from soil survey that's in the Adapt Alaska plan, and there's just a ton of stuff that could be done and has been done in Bristol Bay, ranging from in-stream flow reservations, water quality and stream temperature monitoring, climate change health assessment reports. We actually, and it was Port Highland that took advantage of Bruce Wright's offer several years ago, and so forth. So I'm going to end there, and thanks for letting me, present some information.
Thank you.
Krista, can I'm sorry.
Go for it.
I just really want to step in here with a point that Sue made, especially with all of you who are starting to look at compiling adaptation plans, or where you can put any kind of costs for projects that you're proposing in your plans or in your different assessments. That is really critical. And the reason why I say that is because Congress asked for information that was compiled by BIA. And we realized that although many adaptation plans were getting done, there was not cost associated with any of the infrastructure impacts or whether those are natural proposed infrastructure or whether they're other infrastructure that is happening at the community level. But any time that you can put costs in your plan, that's really critical in case funding comes your way, or in case something like Congress is asking for a report. So I just really want to stress that, because we found huge gaps with that this last year and a half.
And Melinda, just to build on that,
Sorry.
I mean,
Perfect opportunity to say that.
Again, it's it's like, where do you find the money? Because you're talking millions of dollars, and and at least out here, the mindset is defend in place. And my understanding, and even though I don't know much about FEMA funding, though that will fund tribal hazard mitigation plans, and that's kind of helps you get the foot in the door. There's a huge, like, multi-million-dollar tribal set aside, and many tribes are not able to take advantage of the FEMA funding. It's a totally different ball game in terms of, the proposals and how you need to approach things and so forth. But they do fund, infrastructure, again, it's just a shame that I don't know how many tribes are actually able to take advantage of that. But it's something to keep in mind for the future if you know what it's going to cost to with the defend in place mentality, or if you have to relocate certain infrastructure. And I'm going to go back on mute.
Well, thanks again, Susan, for sharing out. And I guess I just want to underscore just the wealth of knowledge that folks are bringing to the table here, and just want to kind of end on that note. As the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network, really drawing on that collective experience is and really facilitating connections among tribes and communities that can learn from each other is really what we are striving to do as a learning network. And so I just want to thank you so much for everyone who did share about their work today. And I want to apologize to those that did mention that they would be willing to share out on their projects. We are already over time amazingly, but we certainly hope to provide more opportunity in the future for to host opportunities for folks to share about the work that they're doing. So want to thank you all for contributing today. And if Mike or Molly, you can advance to the last slide before we sign off. I want to go ahead and make a few announcements. The first, and Alexis or Melinda, if you want to give an overview of these BIA listening sessions, I might just turn it over to you, Melinda, to talk about these upcoming listening sessions, if you don't mind.
Okay. Hey, well, last week already, we already had one listening session that focused on youth, but these listening sessions are being hosted by the BIA Tribal Climate Resilience Program, which is funding all of you. But really the intent of these listening programs are also to inform the Department of Interior, right? And for me, when I saw that this was forthcoming from the Tribal Climate Resilience Program and realizing the significance of being able to speak to climate issues, but also link them to other issues and other decisions that are being made across the department, to attend these and give your input. We know that with our land ownership system and our management system, you know, with all of the different federal lands and we have in Alaska, impact that DOI has on our life and our livelihood. So make links. I would encourage you to make links between what is happening with climate and those other areas, whether they happen under BLM, whether they happen under the National Park Service. Take an opportunity to go to the website and then there's some specific questions that DOI is asking, or excuse me, the Tribal Climate Resilience for DOI, and give your input. So there's going to be one next week on the 28th, you'll see there, as well as the week of November 29th, which sounds like it's going to actually be the December 1st or 2nd. And that's going to be specific to Alaska and look at issues around relocation, managed retreat, and protecting place. But that's also an opportunity to raise issues around what that means for, you know, food security. So I really want to stress the significance of those listening sessions and hope that all of you take time to give your input there. We have some additional announcements that we are going to have our next learning network event on November 22nd, where Canada Chiefs will be sharing their strategy of how they're building out, responding to climate impacts across the region. And so we look forward to that and hope all of you join us with that. For those of you who are calling in from the YK Yukon-Kuskokwim region, that the next 2 days, they are going to have a virtual work session strategy. And if you're at, to definitely contact AVCP, particularly Clarence Daniel, consulting firm is involved in that. If you want more information, you can also contact me and I can put you in touch with folks. And finally, many of you know the Tribal Conference on Environmental Management is forthcoming in November. And there's some pretty great tracks happening with that. And finally, I put another announcement that just came out. Oftentimes I hear that tribes are not hearing enough about security issues. And in the chat, you'll see that there was an announcement that I posted about a 30-minute a webinar that's happening next week on security issues and looking at the area around Nome. So those are just some announcements that are pretty much Alaska related. And again, if you want any information, definitely contact any of us that are on this webinar today. But thank you all. And I think we're within timeline. I don't know, Krista, is there anything else that that I missed?
That's it, Melinda. I just want to thanks again for everyone who joined and who hung on with us. 10 minutes over. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Good, and thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.